We will soon be broadcasting on YouTube Live.
We got the live stream here.
You get it before I even do.
Yeah.
I don't get it until
Get the live on YouTube. Probably you should. We got the live stream here. You get it.
yeah. Takes a while for us to get it.
You know there's coffee back there?
Yes, there is. Help yourself. Okay. All right, we've got the YouTube live stream, and we've got church. But first, I need to send Matthew.
This is like slow motion.
Live on YouTube?
Yes, it is.
Okay, I can copy that link.
Yeah, Community Church of Boston official. is where You'll find it.
Put it on my Facebook.
Okay. Good thinking. Okay. I believe we are going to get going. Here. Good morning. Welcome to Community Church, where we start by lighting a candle. And I try to find myself in the wait a minute.
Hey, Dean, should I pull some more chairs over?
Right. So while I find myself on the laptop, I'm going to light the candle up front here, as if we are physically present in this room together. And we are, because there are about 6 people. I will pan the camera on them in a moment after I light this flame. The flame of justice, the flame of passion, the flame of memory, flame of labor. For a while, we were going to have an annual award that was called the Red Flame Award, named after, what was the name of our member who passed away, who was Ann Timpson, who, and we were going to name it after her. That idea never flew, because we have the Sacco and Vanzetti Award, and we have the W.E.B. Du Bois Address, and maybe the more of those, the better. But anyway, happy Labor Day to everybody. And here's the candle, and it's a crooked candle, but that's okay. It was in the hot sun. But if you look at it straight on like this, it's not crooked. Anyway, welcome everybody, and welcome to the physical attendees. I wish you would join us sometime soon, right here in person, present. We encourage people to wear masks unless they're the speaker or the musician or the presenter. And we are also trying to ventilate the room as best we can. We have doors open, and we're really trying to be safe for all of us. So welcome, and I want to take this opportunity to say hello again to our longtime friend Charlie King, who is joining us from Western Mass. Charlie has played here many times, and Charlie is a upstanding god in the world of social music folkdom. How did I do, Charlie? I'm going to go and put him on the.
Theologically, you're unsound.
We happen to have both of our Charlies on the Zoom call today. Charlie Welch is our president and our tech guru, but he will not be with us long because he's going down to the demo on the Boston Common, the Labor Day demo. I hope you'll all join us after you're done with us here. A lot of us will go down there after we have our lunch that Luis Guzman has prepared us. And join us on any Sunday from now till the middle of June for our program, which is going to be a hybrid program. We're going to learn how to broadcast this and also how to have people together in this room as well. So welcome, and I will now bring up Charlie.
I don't know exactly how to bring myself up. Should I just, yeah, there I am. Thank you, Dean. This is a work in progress, but I thought since we were going to focus on history today and radical history today, that this might be a good time to break in this song. I remember Grandma's face. She looked so sad and quiet. She left one day without a trace, though all my folks deny it. Granddad hated Carrie Nation. It was rum that killed him. They say it skips a generation. Better not tell the children. Somewhere there's a box of letters. Somewhere there's a diary. In a drawer beneath Mom's sweaters, shielded from inquiry. Remember why the old cat died? Curiosity killed him. Some things are best kept inside. Better not tell the children. Better not tell the children. Why bring up the past? Better not tell the children, they are growing up too fast. Better not tell the children, I hope they never ask. Perhaps someday, but till then, better not tell the children. Back in 1491, as Europe's merchants hovered, 140 million souls lived happily undiscovered. We brought them guns and germs and steel. It was all downhill then. 1 in 10 lived to tell the tale. Better not tell the children. Then we learned to line our pockets, thanks to old King Cotton. Slavery guaranteed the profits. Some things are best forgotten. Lincoln said he'd free the slaves, skipped a couple million. Jim Crow rose to dig their graves. Better not tell the children. Somewhere there's a bill of sales. Somewhere there's a tally. Long lost ledgers, tattled tales, whispers in the alley. Laws that sanctioned the lynching mobs and disenfranchised millions. If you want to keep your job, you better not tell the children. Better not tell the children. It will only bring them shame. Better not tell the children. They might think that we're to blame. Better not tell the children. They might say we need to change. Might think that we're the villains. Better not tell the children. Better not tell the children. They might say we need to change. They just might be willing. Better not tell the children.
Thank you, Charlie. I hope you hear that ringing applause from the live audience here at the auditorium in Copley Square.
I'll take your word for it.
Let me just pan the room a little bit to show you. Here we are, a few people here. A few people. We got to start somewhere, and we have started our physical gatherings again. And you can see behind me that door is open. It's a beautiful day out there. And we have a window open in front. We might have to close it because the Greek parade is about to come by at some point, and it might be a little noisy, but that's all right. We'll deal with that. But we have ventilation. We're working hard on. I don't know if you all know, we have new air conditioning and heating with what's called air source heat pumps for most floors of our building now. And it's beautiful, it's efficient, it's electric. The downside is that it basically recycles air in the room. And for the sake of ventilation and fresh air, we're looking into the next step, which is a fresh air, something called heat exchanger, which is part of a big project that is going on right up above. You see that skylight there? There's soon going to be a new roof on there. I hope I didn't bore you all to tears with starting with all this wonky construction stuff, but it's something that I'm very excited about, and it's going to be happening. We are determined to turn this building into a state-of-the-art model of energy efficiency and sustainability for the city of Boston's similarly sized buildings, of which there are like 40,000 buildings. So we're on that journey, and it's a tedious one, and it's got a lot of details. And I just shared a couple of those details with you. So that's my way to welcome you. I want to tell you that there's a new newsletter coming out, and I'll show it to you if I can share my screen with the newsletter. Yes, there it is. And let's start with the next one that's most important is May 6th or May 7th next week. And where is it? I'm looking for it.
May 8th.
There it is. It's Mother's Day. My mother, music, and I'm got to get rid of this here. My mother, music, and dementia. Joel Light is somebody that Ed Pazanese brought to us. Ed, are you here? He's usually here physically, but he's a wonderful character, and he's got a story to tell about his mom. We also are joined by a marvelous musician from Georgia. Her name is Elise Witt, and she has a similar story to tell about her journey with her mother during her last days, and the role of singing in that journey. The week after that, we have Andy Davis and Iraq Arroyo. You know Andy Davis. He was for 20 years. He and his partner Andrea were the directors of the World Fellowship Center up in Conway, near Conway, New Hampshire. Just retired. He's a wonderful storyteller. Iraq Arroyo, half of the foundation movement. The two of them are going to take over everything. I'm determined that I'll try not to say a single word on that day. That's a challenge, because I'm blah blah blah, as you can hear right now. We have several great more. They're not in order here. Memorial Day, Madeline Holmes talking about Hiroshima sister city projects that she's involved with. Hiroshima. We have Andrew Katz coming up. Matthew Ho is disabled vet and a whistleblower on the military, and that's on Memorial Day. We have a concert performance of the Leonard Lerman and Helene Williams. Leonard wrote an opera about the Rosenbergs and an opera about Sacco and Vanzetti. And he and his wife and another tenor are going to sing selections from that opera using our beautiful piano that's behind me here. We'll have it specially tuned for that moment. Jonathan Katz wrote a book called Gangsters of Capitalism that's a biography of Smedley Butler. Jonathan Katz. And every one of these events has wonderful music joining it. In 2 weeks, we have a Wednesday night program, longtime friend of Community Church and a special close friend of Dave Lewitt, our longtime member and former president. His name is Reverend Ignacio Castuera. He's speaking on a Wednesday night on a book he wrote. It's called James and Whitehead. It sounds a little. He's a professor of theology at the Claremont School of Theology in Claremont, California. And this is about William James and Alfred North Whitehead, theologian, philosopher, finished his days out at Harvard. Okay, enough blah, blah, blah about our new newsletter, which is coming out next week. I'm showing you here an announcement about the memorial for Carolyn Poinelli. I don't know that you all know that she passed away in March, and we didn't know about it for 3 weeks till we connected with her family. She is an important member of this community. She was here more than just about anybody, and she was hit by a car in the North End on her way home. This memorial says that her memorial service is on June 26th. That's not true. The memorial service is July 10th. It's a Sunday and it's at 1 p.m. And I hope that lots of us at Community Church will gather. Carolyn, to me, represented a lot of what Community Church represents: fierce independence, fierce adherence to thinking her own thoughts, and fierce discipline in her own kind of hermit way. But she's gone, and I hope a lot of us will come to Carolyn's memorial event. And I just am being a horrible, I'm trying to learn how to do a physical and a virtual event at once with elegance, grace, and style. And it's not an easy task. And I keep on having to let people in. Charlie has already gone, so I'm doing Charlie's job too. I want to read you, I want to finish this, this screen share and get you back on the screen and read you today's selection from Eduardo Galeano, Children of the Days. This is a day book. It's written in the way that Eduardo is very accustomed to writing, which is in small vignettes, 2 or 3 paragraphs. And this one is one for each day. And I love to read from this, and we'll read the May Day reading for May 1st. International Workers' Day, the technology of shared flight. The first goose to take off opens the way for the next, who clears the path for the third, and the strength of the third raises the fourth, who then helps the fifth. And the impulse of the fifth pulls along the sixth, who offers wind to the seventh. When the lead goose tires, he goes to the back of the line and leaves his spot to another, who moves to the apex of the V. The geese form in the air. Each takes a turn forward and back, and none of them believes she is a super goose because she flies first, or that flying last makes her or him a loser. May 1st, International Workers' Day. I love it. Eduardo Galeano never ceases to inspire. I got to tell you something, that Bob Datilio had so many books, and we've spent the last 2 months basically putting them in categories and moving the stuff that we really want to keep up to the 3rd floor, where there's hopefully, if we decide that way, going to be a magnificent library of his books. And there wasn't much that the library was missing, but it was missing Galeano. And I've brought my entire collection of Galeano books to add to the library. I'm going to donate them, both in English and in Spanish. There's a whole tub, and this is one of them, Children of the Days. And there's more upstairs. Come and enjoy them, and take them home with you, borrow them, and bring them back when you're done. Let's see, have we any more announcements? Not that I'm thinking of right this moment. I'm sure I will after I bring up Charlie King to sing us a couple of more songs. And while I do this, I sing step by step, the longest march can be won. Can be won. Many stones can form an arch, singly none. Where is the share? Oh, it's up here. Come on, replace spotlight. That's what it is. And in union, what we will can be accomplished still. Drops of water turn a mill, singly none. Charlie!
Thank you, Dean. I had the I think it was reasonable to expect that Steve and you would help us cast a critical eye on capitalism. And I'll sing a song about Wall Street with a brief introduction by Melvina Reynolds. Well, money has its own way, and money has to grow. It grows on human blood and bone, as any child would know. It's iron stuff and paper stuff with no life of its own, and so it takes its growing sap from human blood and bone. And many a child goes hungering because the wage is low, and men die on the battlefield to make the money grow. And those that take the money crop are avid without end. They plant it in the tenements to make it grow again. The little that they leave for us, it cannot be a seed. We spend it for the shoddy clothes and every daily need. We spend it in a minute, in an hour it is gone, to find its way to grow again. On human blood and bone, blood and bone. I was reading the Wall Street Journal, exploring the secret of wealth, how a corporation issues capital stock and then sells it back to itself, how they buy up other companies, then run them into the ground. So what's the hitch? How do they get rich on this financial merry-go-round? What do they make on Wall Street to make the world a little bit better? Vermont makes sweet maple syrup, Wisconsin the very best cheddar. They grow those big potatoes in the fields of Idaho. But what do they make on Wall Street? What is it that they grow? Brockton, Mass., where I was born, was a shoe town, tough and gritty. Gary and Pittsburgh were steel towns then. Detroit was the motor city. The beer that made Milwaukee famous ain't made there anymore. Wall Street bought 'em for the bottom line and moved them all offshore. What do they make on Wall Street to make the world a little bit better? Rosie is riveting aeroplanes. Mailman delivered a letter. Farmers grow the wheat for the folks who need the dough. But what do they make on Wall Street? What is it that they grow? Henry Ford invented the Model T and put Uncle Sam at the wheel. Carnegie built the rolling mills because Henry needed the steel. Mr. Peabody hauled the mountain away, sold Carnegie all of the coal. Now Wall Street strip mines these industries and leaves us this great big hole. So what do they make on Wall Street to make the world a little bit better? Teacher can make the kids smarter. Grandma can knit you a sweater. They grow those big tomatoes in the fields of Ohio. That cucumber you ate today was grown in Mexico. With all that Wall Street wealth, there must be something that they grow. So what do they make on Wall Street? What is it that they grow?
Thank you, Charlie. You got one more for us?
I do.
Oh, good.
When Martin Luther King began to speak out against the Vietnam War, and when he began to build an alliance between poor black and white people, his support dwindled. And he gave a speech shortly after his speech at Riverside Church condemning the war in Vietnam. And in that speech, he addressed the fact that people were walking away from the mission of the civil rights movement, and he allowed, as he was biting off a lot to chew, but he had this unshakable conviction, and he put it in one memorable sentence. He said, "When you stand up for justice, you can never fail." Martin set his heart on the poor people's campaign. His allies and advisors told him, "Don't go down that trail. The work is hard, the journey long, you'll come back empty-handed." He said, "When you stand up for justice, you can never fail." You can sing that line with me if you want. You can never fail. Can never fail. Take up the task at hand, lift your voice and take a stand, 'cause when you stand up for justice, you can never fail. Martin spoke his truth to power on the war in Vietnam. His enemies and friends all told him, stick to civil rights. He listened to his conscience, and he knew the cause of peace cannot be set apart from justice. It is all one fight, and you can never fail. You can never fail. You take up the task at hand, lift your voice and take a stand. When you stand up for justice, you can never fail. The arc of the moral universe is long, and we don't know what the journey might entail. But it bends towards justice, and if we stand up for justice, Martin said that we will never fail. Congress promises the moon, but you know they don't deliver. Business offers nothing if it isn't up for sale. The president will fail. He's a taker, not a giver. But when you stand up for justice, you can never fail. You can never fail. You can never fail. Take up the task at hand. Lift your voice, take a stand. And when you stand up for justice, you can never fail.
Oh yeah, Charlie. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Thanks. This is just such an honor to have you with us today. And to have a bunch of people with us too. It warms the soul. I want to just show you on this day, this new acquisition at Community Church. I don't know if you can see it. It has plastic over it. And I'm blocking my own microphone. But this is a very large print of Ralph Fasanella that came from Bob Datilio's house. And it was printed in 1917. It was like number 17 out of 250 prints. Who knows if it has any value, but it has value to me and to us because of Ralph Fasanella and what he did to document in beautiful artistic way the strikes in Lawrence. And this is actually a depiction of Lawrence. There's a big demonstration at one end. It has banners that say white and Negro together, as would be in that period, peace, democracy, and security, fight for peace, democracy. And Lucky Strike, a big, huge banner, and a lot of other things, just a very busy piece with a lot of details. And as soon as we can get around to it, that's going to get framed and it's going to be proudly on our wall. Ralph Fasanella, 1917. There's just a lot of stuff that around the church now that was Bob's stuff that came here, mostly his books. I want to tell you about one more thing, which is a little plug for May 22nd. It's a Sunday in the afternoon at 3 p.m. Charlie King has organized a beautiful event. It's his tribute to the great British radical singer named Leon Rosselson. And it features quite a cast of folks contributing songs of Leon Rosselson. Billy Bragg, Martin Simpson, Martin Carthy, and Frankie Armstrong, and Charlie, and yours truly also contributing songs. It should be a wonderful event. That's on May 22nd in the afternoon. It's a virtual event, and please be in touch with you, and I will get you as the date approaches the link if you want to join us for that celebration of the music and the activism, radicalism of Leon Rosselson. If you are not familiar with his music, check him out, Leon Rosselson. Okay, I believe that we are ready to introduce our speaker today. Steve Kellerman is a longtime member of Community Church, is a retired machinist, and also a serious historian of the labor movement and of radical labor union organizers and radical presidential candidates. That's why it was just great for us to kind of kick off our physical return because Steve didn't want to have much to do with this Zoom stuff, and I don't blame him. It's pretty amazing, and it's also pretty lame by comparison to people being together. And so that's why I'm just really excited to invite Steve to be back with us. I have to switch over the camera to the other camera. Let's see if I can do this with elegance and grace. There it is. Folks, I want to also talk about the fact that Steve donated an enormous library of books to the UMass Boston Department of Labor Studies. And we had a really nice event where Steve and several others spoke, and there was music at UMass about a week and a half ago. And that was just a really wonderful, generous contribution of books to the Department of Labor Studies there. So folks, welcome Steve Kellerman to our humble Community Church of Boston stage. Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Dean. I want to wish everybody a happy May Day. And I also want to say that I am honored to be on the same program with my longtime friend and fellow worker, Charlie King. Okay, the subject of my talk today is Eugene V. Debs. Eugene Debs was a giant, the best-known socialist the U.S. produced by far. He ran for president 5 times as the candidate of the Socialist Party, polling slightly under 1 million votes in 1912 and again in 1920. Debs was the public face of socialism in the country, and that is not an exaggeration. He was born in 1855 to a family of immigrants from Alsace, French-speaking, although also fluent in German. Their first son, he had 3 older sisters and a couple of younger siblings, including his brother, whose name I don't recall at this instant, who was his longtime secretary and alter ego. Debs was named for 2 French literary figures. The Eugene was for Eugene Sue, the author of once famous melodramatic epics, The Mysteries of the People, A Proletarian Family Through the Ages, a 19-volume work tracing the struggles of a working family from pre-Roman Gaul into the 19th century. Also, The Wandering Jew and Mysteries of Paris. His middle name, Victor, was for Victor Hugo, the more famous author of Les Miserables and The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Evenings in the Debs home featured readings from Sue and Hugo, along with the German author Friedrich Schiller and others. These are all romantic epics of a progressive nature. The Debs family settled in Terre Haute, Indiana, a bustling town that early became a railroad hub. The father of the family tried his hand at several working-class jobs with severely limited success, and eventually became the proprietor of a flourishing grocery business, which his wife had begun. When Eugene was an adolescent, he left school to become a fireman on the Indianapolis and Terre Haute Railroad. He liked the work, stoking the boiler furnaces on locomotives, but at his mother's urging, quit after less than 5 years because of the life-threatening danger of the work. During that time, he became a member of the Brotherhood of Locomotive Firemen, a craft association mostly concerned with sick and death benefits and increasing the professionalism of its members. The Brotherhood had been formed not long before and was struggling to establish itself alongside brotherhoods of locomotive engineers, conductors, brakemen, switchmen, and carmen. The brotherhoods did not see themselves as labor unions and generally preached harmony between bosses and employees. Debs immediately became active in promoting the brotherhood, and even after he stopped working as a fireman, he was elected national secretary, treasurer, organizer, and the editor of the Fireman's Magazine, which under his vigorous editorship became a widely circulated journal advocating organization of workers on the railroads and beyond. As an organizer, he traveled widely around the Midwest and the rest of the country, meeting many firemen and other railroaders and working hard to establish the BLF as a sound organization. The logic of the situation and the rapacity of the rail bosses impelled the BLF to act more and more as a union, and Debs early on became known as an effective negotiator, willing to stand up to the bosses. His day job was working as a bookkeeper at a wholesale grocer's in Terre Haute, for which he studied bookkeeping at a local business college. Developing an early interest in politics, as a Democrat, he was elected to several terms as city clerk in Terre Haute and was elected to a term in the Assembly, the lower house of the Indiana legislature, an experience that left him disillusioned with normative politics and one which he later claimed to be ashamed of having participated in. From the beginning, Debs was seen as a forceful and charismatic figure, capable of standing up to the arrogant rail bosses on behalf of his members and developing into one of the major orators in U.S. history. From this time and for the remainder of his life, Debs was a formidable speaker, declaiming for more than an hour at a time. Although his speeches now seem flowery and Victorian, contemporaries were struck by the force of his platform style. Tall and slim, he would lean over his podium and gesture with an outstretched arm, leaving each member of the audience with the impression of having been addressed personally. The efforts of Debs and the other BLF officers succeeded in establishing the Brotherhood as a successful organization. The increasing concentration and wealth of the railroad corporations convinced Debs that the rail brotherhoods had to federate to match the strength of the bosses. He used the Fireman's Magazine to promote this program, which enjoyed some success until the Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineers under P.M. Arthur deserted the rest of the brotherhoods to cut a better deal for its aristocratic members at the expense of the others. At this point, Debs realized that the brotherhoods were ineffective and that rail workers needed an industrial union that embraced all the crafts and the unskilled. Around 1890, he and some associates undertook to form the American Railway Union. The new union, with Gene Debs as its president, and after winning a couple of major battles against J.J. Hill and the Great Northern Railroad, seemed about to supplant the brotherhoods. Okay, just a little break from Debs. Speaking of J.J. Hill, he was called an empire builder. He built one of the transcontinental railroads, the Great Northern, and also had a number of smaller subsidiary railroads under his control. And he appears in a verse of the song, Hallelujah, I'm a Bum. And you have to imagine hobos riding in boxcars singing this verse. And people are welcome to join in the chorus if they know it. I like Jim Hill. He's a good friend of mine. That's why I am rolling down Jim Hill's main line. Hallelujah, I'm a bum. Hallelujah, bum again. Hallelujah, give us a handout to revive us again. Okay, so this was the situation in 1894 when the employees, the ARU was on its way up. Okay, when the employees of the Pullman Palace Car Company in the company town of Pullman, Illinois, joined the ARU and asked for help in opposing the exceptionally rapacious George Pullman, inventor of the sleeping car. The Pullman employees attempted to negotiate with the company, but in the face of Pullman stonewalling, resolved to strike and asked for ARU support. Debs feared that the ARU didn't have the strength to prevail in such a situation and advised against a strike. But the delegates at the ARU convention were so outraged at what they learned about the Pullman situation that they voted overwhelmingly for the strike. Debs thereupon did everything he could to make the strike a success. The union declared a boycott of all trains that included Pullman cars. The railroads leased the sleeping cars, which remained the property of the Pullman Company. The railroad corporations were happy to fight the ARU. They feared its growing strength. And the General Managers Association, made up of all the railroads operating out of Chicago, declared solidarity with George Pullman and attached Pullman cars to all their passenger trains. The ARU responded by shutting down all rail traffic. The federal government, under President Grover Cleveland and Attorney General Richard Olney, thereupon ordered mail cars attached to all the trains. Remember, these guys were Democrats, in case anyone still has illusions about that party. Okay, and they got an injunction against the ARU and Debs and sent the U.S. Army to curse the strike. Debs and 3 other officials were arrested for contempt of the injunction and sent to the Woodstock prison in Illinois. The strike was crushed and the ARU effectively destroyed. Debs did 6 months of relatively easy time. His fellows did 3. While in the jug, Debs was visited by the Wisconsin socialist Victor Berger, who presented him with a copy of Karl Marx's Das Kapital and talked to him about socialism and capitalism. Debs left the Woodstock prison a socialist, as he remained the rest of his life. Along with Berger, Debs helped found the Social Democracy in the later 1890s. The new organization, in addition to creating a political party, dabbled in schemes to found socialist utopian communities in the US West. With the collapse of the latter, Debs, Berger, and their associates created the new Social Democratic Party. In 1900, they fused with a faction that had left the Socialist Labor Party to form the Socialist Party of America. The new party gained instant credibility thanks to Debs's national standing since the Pullman strike. In 1900, the SPA ran Debs for president for the first of 5 times. Debs used the drama of presidential campaigns to educate the public about the program and principles of socialism. He became a largely full-time publicist for the Socialist Party of America, crisscrossing the entire country, speaking nearly every day, sometimes several times in the course of a day. The SP leased a locomotive and a few rail cars, dubbed the Red Special, from which Debs spoke and which carried a brass band and large quantities of socialist literature, which were distributed widely. Debs was also a featured speaker at socialist camp meetings in Oklahoma and surrounding states, which attracted thousands of rural socialists. He also became a staff writer and editor of the immensely popular socialist publication, The Appeal to Reason, and its successor, the National Ripsaw. Although he avoided intra-party faction struggles and almost never attended SP conventions, Debs was very much in the left wing of the party. He always advanced the conception of socialism as a radically transformed society, with wage slavery being abolished and capitalism ended, a democratic society of free access to the goods and services socially produced. This placed him at odds with the right and the so-called center wings of the SP, which conceived of socialism as the nationalization of the trusts, the monopolies, and society and work being not that much different from what we have now, like the socialist and labor parties of Europe nowadays, which take turns with conservatives in administering the capitalist system. Debs's conception of socialism involved continuing support for industrial unionism, which also differentiated him from the right wing, which had long committed itself to support of the craft unionism of the AFL. In keeping with this, he attended the founding convention of the IWW in 1905 and continued working to build the new union as an alternative to the AFL until the IWW explicitly declared itself syndicalist in 1908 and thereafter eschewed electoral politics. Debs left the IWW at that point, but never denounced it. When the US entered the First World War in 1917, the SP, unlike the socialist parties in all the other belligerent countries except Italy, declared opposition to the war. A number of right-wing socialists quit the party and joined in the war effort. What was left of the party suffered severe persecution, losing mailing privileges and the rights of speech and assembly. They, like the IWW, pacifists, German Americans, were persecuted severely during the war. Kate Richards O'Hare, Rose Pastor Stokes, Victor Berger, Adolf Germer, and many other socialists were arrested and given prison sentences for war opposition. Debs, after delivering an anti-war speech in Canton, Ohio, was sentenced to 10 years in prison. He served the time from April 1919 until Christmas of 1921, when President Warren G. Harding commuted a sentence. You'll note the war ended in November of 1918. His conviction and his prison sentence took place after the end of the war. And you should also note that all the belligerent countries that participated in the war had anti-war movements, and people in all the countries of Europe, North America, were put in prison for opposing the war. At the end of the war, outside of the United States, they were all released. In the United States, many of them stayed in prison until 1923. And the government of Woodrow Wilson and then the government of Warren G. Harding used the imprisonment of these militants to break up the militant organizations. They played prisoners against one another. Okay, so Debs left the penitentiary in Atlanta with his health largely shattered by the prison regime. Food, the isolation, the being kept in cells for long periods of time undermined his health, which was by that time somewhat precarious anyway. Although he resumed his speaking campaigns, he spent much time in sanatoriums and remained frail until his death in 1926. One of the most remarkable features of his imprisonment was that the SP nominated him as its presidential candidate in 1920. His campaign from prison, which was widely perceived as a referendum on the late war, now increasingly unpopular, on the continued imprisonment of war opponents, and on the vindictive warmonger Woodrow Wilson, netted Debs nearly 1 million votes. Gene Debs' personality and manner explain much of his appeal. He was a modest person who never looked to exercise authority, a comrade among comrades. That being said, he was always comfortable being a public spokesperson for the movements he supported and enjoyed the applause of the audiences. He was a famously convivial person, loving to socialize with comrades during his travels, often in taverns. At times, he drank heavily. His generosity was legendary. He would leave Terre Haute on speaking excursions with an overcoat. Almost invariably, he would return coatless, having given the coat to an impecunious comrade who couldn't afford warm clothing. This is really true. It happened over and over in the course of his life. Debs's marriage to his wife, Kate, was not a happy one. She was conventional in her attitudes and adhered to petty bourgeois standards. Kate shared none of Gene's socialist commitments and was not comfortable as the spouse of a public figure. They married young and remained in that relationship the rest of their lives, never having children. Debs was on the road much of his life when he wasn't in prison. It was discovered by historians that Debs had a much more passionate relationship with Mabel Curry, another Terre Haute resident and socialist who, like Debs, was married. They managed to spend some time together and engaged in extensive correspondence using friends and relatives as mail drops. Okay, one of these buttons I'm wearing, I don't know, it probably doesn't show up that well, is a reproduction of a 1912 campaign button. It shows Debs and his running mate from 1912, Emil Seidel. Emil Seidel was a member of the right wing of the Socialist Party, and had actually been promoted as an alternative presidential candidate to Debs, but ended up, Debs' popularity was so great that even his political opponents in the SP wanted him to run for president because he was so popular nationally. Okay, Emil Seidel served several terms as the first of a few socialist mayors of Milwaukee. And an interesting story. He was what was known as a sewer socialist. His conception of socialism was pretty narrow. Running for a local public office, getting control of cities, electing city councilors and mayors, and using those positions to build a very worthwhile public projects. What he did upon becoming mayor of Milwaukee, he wanted to build a series of parks and other public improvements. And instead of going to the banks and taking out bonds, which is the way municipalities regularly proceed, this racket, which gives the bankers millions of dollars every time a city has to do anything. What he did was sell off some public property, use those funds to purchase the parkland, and thereafter use current income to finance all the city's projects. This gave Milwaukee a bunch of very worthwhile public works, and also enraged the bankers who were being cut out of their racket. They went to the courts to try to stop this, but the courts couldn't find anything illegal about it. And Milwaukee, to this day, I've never visited the city, but I believe it has a higher level of public projects than most other cities. And the Socialists continued electing mayors in Milwaukee until the 1950s or maybe the 60s. Okay, well, Debs was a socialist of somewhat of a different nature. Okay, so Debs' enormous popularity, his widespread reputation for integrity, and his matchless ability to advocate for socialism makes it especially appropriate that we honor his memory on May Day, International Workers' Day. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Let's have one more song from Charlie, and then we'll have some conversation. But first, I'm going to put myself up here. Let's see if I can find myself. Where are oh, now I remember it's a different place. What I'm going to tell you while I'm doing this, there we go, is that we're going to have a new face to this Zoom thing. He's coming on with us probably next week. His name is Amar Ahmad. Some of you know him because he's quite a presence at Mass Peace Action. And Amar is a young guy. He's coming on and he's going to help us with audiovisual and internet and social network stuff. And I'm really excited to welcome him to be with us and to help us figure out this hybrid physical internet thing. That's the first thing. Next thing I want to let you know is that I have a book right here. This is our membership book. During COVID times, we have not had too many new entries. And we invite you to become a member of Community Church. And what are the privileges and rights appertaining thereto? Well, not too many, just blood, misery, and gore and guts. But it's a chance to find out more about what we do here and what this building is about and what we're trying to get done here for social justice and radical change. And it's about becoming a part of it and becoming a part of the decision-making about the future of this place and about the history of this place. We have archives on the 5th floor now that go back 102 years. In fact, I wanted to tell Steve about archives that we have. The oldest stuff we have is a box of nothing but newspaper clippings and old articles. And there's two themes. One is labor, organizing. There's some photos of people, organizers who had been roughed up in the Lawrence and Lowell strikes. And the other thing was a bunch of clippings about conscientious objectors to World War I. And that's amazingly what Community Church was born in a revulsion to that experience known as World War I. And it was founded in 1920, just in the aftermath of that, in desire to find a new way, and especially reacting to the collusion of the churches in recruiting soldiers to join the military in World War I. Anyway, we have this membership book and we'd like to have new names. A sad thing is that Carolyn Poinelli, decades attending this church, refused to join for whatever her reasons were. Her independent way of thinking, like we love here. But just before she passed, she joined. Her signature, it's right there, and it's sadness that comes to me when I see her name signed there, along with two new members in the last year, Seren Moudliar and Beatrice Green, lovely additions to our family here. And let's have some more additions to this family. Hopefully Amar Ahmad is going to be a magnet for young people, and his knowledge of social media and networks is going to make this happen, where we can say, hey, you young folks, you want a church? Here, have it. Do whatever you like with it. I can hardly wait. It's not that I'm tired, but our median age somehow, whatever. I will shut up and put up my next prop, which is this beautiful basket. And I am going to entice you by hypnotizing you into going to our website and going to PayPal and credit card and giving me all of your money. You can also send us checks, 565 Boylston Street, 02116 in Copley Square. It's just a little message that we run because of you, and we move forward because of you. Am I done? I think I'm done. Charlie, finish us out with a song here, and then we'll have some question and answer with Steve. Ah, nice background. Love it.
I thought maybe it would make me feel more like I was right there with you.
Yeah.
Also thought it'd be nice to sing with Bartolomeo and Nicola looking over my shoulder. And since we're focusing on the great forefathers and foremothers of our radical history, I thought I'd sing the song that first brought me to community church. Who will remember the hands so white and fine that touched the finest linen, that poured the finest wine? Who will remember the genteel words they spoke to name the lives of two good men, a nuisance or a joke? All who know these two good arms know I never had to rob or kill. I can live by my own two hands and live well. And all my life I have struggled to rid the earth of all such crime. Who will remember Judge Webster Thayer, one hand on the gavel, the other resting on the chair? Who will remember the hateful words he said, speaking to the living in the language of the dead? All who know these two good arms know I never had to rob or kill. I can live by my own two hands and live well. And all my life I have struggled to rid the earth of all such crime. Who will remember the hand upon the switch that took the lives of two good men in the service of the rich? Who will remember the one that gave the nod, or the chaplain standing near at hand to invoke the name of God? We will remember this good shoemaker. We will remember this poor fish peddler. We will remember all the strong arms and hands that never once found justice in the hands that ruled this land. And all who know these two good men know they never had to rob or kill. Each had lived by his own two hands, and they lived well. And all their lives they had struggled to rid the earth of all such crime. And all our lives we must struggle to rid the earth of all such crime. I'm thinking while I sing that, Dean, that one of the main things that were brought up in the trial against Sacco and Vanzetti, besides their labor agitation and their immigrant status, was the fact that they resisted the entry into the First World War and the draft to be part of that. And that was used to condemn them in a Boston courthouse, or I guess it was Norwell, wasn't it? But anyhow.
Dedham.
Get them. Oh, I'm in a in an auditorium full of scholars. Watch my mouth.
Thank you, Charlie. And move us to there. Yes, Charlie, it just really means a lot to hear you sing that song. That song is an anthem for us, and every time we sing it, it just evokes so much of what this church is about and what we represent. It's the Sacco and Vanzetti in our DNA. 1920, Mrs. Winslow, one of the founding mothers of this church, and Mrs. Evans befriended Vanzetti, went to visit him in the jail. They gave him English lessons. Mrs. Winslow was in Italy, in Villa Falletto, visiting Vanzetti's family when news came that they had been executed. So it goes way back. And as you folks can see, we have the plaque, which is Charlie's, what's it called, the background screen. And the plaque is here. There are several castings of that plaque, but this is one of them, and it's an amazing thing for us to have here. We're in an effort to try to have that cast installed in a public place in the city of Boston. It's an effort that goes up and down. Bob DiTilio was behind it quite a bit, and after his passing, It's been on hold, but there's a Sacco and Vanzetti Commemoration Society that we are important parts of. Maybe we take the initiatives to try to get the city to help us make that happen. On the subject of Sacco and Vanzetti, I want to let folks know, if you didn't get the email, that we are in the process of selecting the new Sacco and Vanzetti Award winner for the fall for 2022 and beyond. We are also in the process of trying to figure out, maybe democratize, maybe bring out into the open the process of selecting this activist social justice person who will receive the next prize. I made a motion. My vote was for the Holy Land Foundation 5, who are a group of 5 successful Palestinian businessmen that started a charity that became the biggest Muslim charity in the United States, that supported mostly children in Gaza and the West Bank, that also responded to Oklahoma City with millions of dollars in aid to the victims of the bombing there. And then after 2001, these 5 men their charity was closed down, and they were tried and convicted of terrorism crimes and are serving long sentences. And it's an injustice that really takes us straight back to Sacco and Vanzetti that happened in 2004, 2005. That's my vote, but there are several other, we sent out an email inviting everybody to join us this Tuesday for a Zoom meeting where we talk about Sacco and Vanzetti. And hopefully this Zoom meeting, my hope is that it will, that just by initiating a meeting, that I won't say another word. I've made a motion to have this, and as a result, we've gotten some more great ideas for new award winners. One is Bob Datilio himself, who gave us all these books and who studied Sacco and Vanzetti his whole life. And we now have on the 3rd floor an entire library of the books written about Sacco and Vanzetti. It's enormous, and in several languages. We also have all of his research materials, which are some really amazing primary sources that Jerry Kaplan, who is just another new incredible addition to this community. Jerry is a retired from Harvard University Press, and he's himself a very avid collector of anarchist materials from the early 20th century. And he is going through all of these materials, correspondences, ephemera of all sorts, magazines, periodicals, journals, and getting them ready in an organized way to join the repository of materials that will be in the Boston Public Library and in some other anarchist collections around the country, University of Michigan and NYU. So just wanted to give you a little sense of things going on here. Any of you who want to come on a Monday, Wednesday, or Friday, and we would be glad to give you a tour of what's going on the 3rd floor, all of these materials being analyzed. And we also have Dominic, what's Dominic's last name? He lives down in Quincy, and he's another anarchist dude, and he is fluent in Italian. And so his presence there is really good, because a lot of this stuff is in Italian. So come on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I'm toying with another thought. Just one more thought. We're gonna start on Wednesdays a new tradition. Donald Lothrop, the minister here for 40 years, made meatloaf on Wednesday nights, and they had different fora on different radical topics. For all the years he was here, he'd made meatloaf every Wednesday night. Well, I have another idea. During the day, Wednesday is the day that Luis Guzman, our cook, comes in, and he comes from Chelsea, and there's a restaurant right next to where he lives that sells pupusas for $1 a piece on Wednesdays. So we're going to call Wednesdays Pupusa Palusa. And you're welcome to join us on a Wednesday. And you can enjoy pupusas, and we will give you a tour of what's going on. And that includes not only the books in the auditorium, the Sacco and Vanzetti research, a beautiful library of photography books from Bob in a part of the third floor, photography, art, and architecture, just these big format coffee table books of photographers of the early 20th century. Then there's the fifth floor, which has our archives, which is another whole project unto itself that needs a lot of attention and grants and grant writing. And it's just, there's a beautiful history there for us and for someone, maybe a PhD candidate, maybe someone who wanted to write a book about community church. There you have it. How about we have a conversation? Anybody want to raise their little digital hand or flap their wings in the air and talk to Steve Kellerman about all these things? Thank you, Steve, for that wonderful talk. It was just great to know that you are a member of this community and that you've given us a number of different talks like that. We're going to go back to Steve there. Anybody want to?
Dean, I'm gonna say goodbye. I'm on to my next meeting. But thank you, Steve, and thank you, Dean, and thanks to community.
Charlie, thanks for being with us. Yeah. It's a pleasure and a privilege. Yeah, all right. All right.
Okay, I'd like to, before the question and answer stuff, I would like to make just a couple of points regarding Sacco and Vanzetti and community church. Community church was founded in 1920, as Dean said, largely in reaction to the recently ended First World War. Sacco and Vanzetti were arrested the same year in 1920, and the community church immediately joined into the Sacco and Vanzetti defense, and the character of the church was largely formed through the Sacco and Vanzetti defense activities. Yeah, they were executed, I think, in 1927.
That's right.
And yeah, there's no question they were framed up. There's no possibility whatsoever that Vanzetti could have been involved in the crime that they were executed for. And the idea of Sacco being involved in a crime that it was a robbery, and the mechanism for it was for gangsters to walk up to the paymaster of a shoe factory and his bodyguard and just shoot them in cold blood, take the money. And this is not anything Sacco or Vanzetti could have been involved in. You know, it was an open frame up. They were active against the war, active against capitalism, active against the state. And that's the reason that the frame up went forward. And even though there's no documentation, it was clear from day one that the FBI, even before it had the name FBI, J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI were putting great pressure on the authorities in Massachusetts to continue with the frame up, because he knew that they were innocent of the charges against them, but they were guilty of opposing his whole system. So yeah, that's Sacco and Vanzetti and the community church.
It's such a familiar story. It's the Holy Land Foundation 5. Part of the reason they were slammed so hard, same thing with Chuck Turner and so many others, is they wouldn't cooperate with the FBI.
Yeah.
You know, they wouldn't back down, and
Yeah.
so they got just slammed.
Yeah, framed.
Framed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's right. Kevin, you want to go up there to the mic?
Oh, all right, sure.
Or can I bring you the mic? Here.
I'm gonna have my knee replaced, so.
Let me bring you the mic. So,
All right, thanks.
yeah, that's easy. Folks, this is Kevin Devine, longtime labor
Yeah.
activist.
Okay, yeah,
There you go.
okay, where I live now, I just wanted, it's about, I live in Braintree, and I live near where John Mahar Highway is. That's the guy, the kid, I should say, the newspaper boy, who was used by Judge Webster Thayer, I believe, to zero in on Sacco and Vanzetti, saying that he had seen the shooting. And he said it was them. There was no proof of that. It was just a kid little saying that. He told this judge this. It was a setup.
And in fact, we have a speaker coming here on June 19th for Juneteenth. He's speaking on that day on antebellum slavery in Massachusetts. But he also does a presentation about Sacco and Vanzetti. He's a retired judge from Martha's Vineyard, and his name is Gregory Williams. And he tells me that he interviewed, before they died, some of the eyewitnesses to the actual crime, who say, completely recanted, they say, it wasn't them. The people that did that did not look anything like them. So it'd be interesting to hear from Judge Gregory Williams. Thank you, Kevin.
About
Go
this
ahead.
is that they named a street where near where I live called John Mahar Highway, and that was the guy that the kid that they were somehow glorified as the one who saw the crime. Okay, that's it. That was just it.
That was the only thing he was famous for?
Yeah, that's the only thing. It
Wow.
was. That's what they. It was a propaganda move by the Creel Commission. Probably.
Go ahead, Matthew.
Thank you, Dean. Yeah, my name is Matthew Andrews, longtime infrequent member of the church. So I really loved the presentation, Steve. And actually, I didn't ever, maybe I knew, but I never thought about one thing that you said, that the war was actually over before Debs was convicted and sent to prison. And that's something that didn't happen to similar activists in other countries. And so I just feel like the more I learn about US history, the more I realize how uniquely vicious the capitalist class seems to be here. So thank you for that. The question I'd like to ask is, it seems that, just kind of to bring it into the modern day, I wonder what Eugene Debs would think about both. You talked a lot about his role as an anti-war activist and as a labor activist. And these are issues that are, of course, very pertinent and ongoing today. So maybe you could say a word or two just about the legacy of Debs and what we should take from it as we engage in both the anti-war and labor struggles today. Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to start by saying that my longtime friend and fellow worker, Matt Andrews, was a member of the Socialist Party for a very large part of his life. Okay, what would Debs think about today? I think there's no question he would still be part of the labor movement and still be part of the peace movement. He was thoroughly committed to both causes. He started off as a union man with the Brotherhood of Locomotive Firemen, and remained a strong advocate of labor organization and for workers to organize to advance their own program against capitalism, to replace capitalism. And war, the monstrosity of war, the destruction, the bloodshed, the killing, and the fact that since the 1930s, or even earlier, I guess starting with the Japanese attack on China, warfare has become war against the civilians of the country where the wars are being fought. Prior to that, the wars took place between armies. If you had the bad luck to be living in a battle zone, you could be hurt. But in the 20th century, the nature of war, which was always a horror, changed drastically. And the civilians, the bombing of German cities, the bombing of London and Rotterdam by the Germans, the bombing of Warsaw, the bombing of Guernica during the Spanish Civil War. These are horrors that there's no question Debs would have been in the forefront of the fight against war. And yeah, and right now the situation in the Ukraine is absolutely horrible. Russia, in a war of open aggression, attacked the Ukraine, and the United States and the rest of NATO are pouring enormous amounts of military stuff into the Ukraine to keep this a war that'll go on for years and years to come. Another endless war, like what we saw in Iraq and Afghanistan, Gaza. Yeah, these just horrors that never end. And there's no question which side Gene Debs would have been on and all this stuff. And I think the end will come once we get rid of capitalism, the driving force behind like all the problems, and nationalism. A curse equal to capitalism. It's
Steve, do you know if there are any, if there's any film footage of Debs?
Yeah, there is film of him leaving the penitentiary in Atlanta. Yeah, that's an interesting story in itself. When Harding finally committed his sentence after commuted the sentence after 2.5 years behind bars, Debs had become enormously popular with the other prisoners. He advocated for them, befriended them, and when he was, it's funny. Before he was released, after Harding became the president, Harding's attorney general was Doherty. Don't recall his first name now. Harry M. Doherty. Who was an old crony of Harding's from their Ohio days before Harding became president. Doherty was a shifty character. He was involved in a lot of the corruption that came to light after Harding died. Harding himself was not a bad person. In fact, Harding was the only US president between U.S. Grant and Harry Truman who spoke up for the rights of Black people. He was never in a position to do much about it, but he did take a public stand on the issue. All the others turned a blind eye to Jim Crow and lynching and all the rest of the discrimination. But anyway, right after Harding came into office, there was a very strong movement by 1920 to release the people who were still in prison for anti-war activity, including Debs. Debs was the most famous of them, but there were hundreds. So Doherty invited Debs to come to Washington, D.C. for an interview, and Debs was given his civilian clothes that had been taken away from him when he was first imprisoned. Got on a train, unguarded, rode to Washington, D.C., and had an interview with Doherty that lasted for a few hours and was cordial on both sides. And thereafter, and then he went back to prison, again, unguarded. He could have escaped if he had been inclined to, but that was not his nature. And went back to prison, and the commutation process dragged on for some time. It wasn't until Christmas of 1921. Harding had been in office for nearly a year at that point that Debs was released. And others continued to stay in prison, and the governmental authorities continued to pit them against one another. And to continue undermining the organizations that they came from, the Socialist Party and the IWW in particular.
Am I right that that's right? Also, when the Palmer raids happened and there was,
Yeah.
there
Well, that
was some
was-
explosions and suddenly all kinds of Italian immigrants being rounded up and just deported summarily
Yeah.
without any process.
Yeah, well, A. Mitchell Palmer was Woodrow Wilson's last attorney general. His predecessor had been as fiercely opposed to civil liberties as Palmer. But Palmer was like the lead figure in the Wilson administration in acting against war opponents and imprisoning them and keeping them in prison. And there was a campaign that Sacco and Vanzetti had been part of in its earlier days, a campaign of bombing by Italian anarchists. The Italian anarchists, a movement that never had a name. It was Luigi Galliani was the lead figure in the movement. He was the editor of the publication Cronica Sovversiva, which is subversive chronicle. The government early in the war started moving against the anarchists. The anarchists who never recognized the legitimacy of the government reacted to the persecution by taking up warfare. Yeah, they were under the mistaken impression that they had the firepower to actually do something. And they set off a series of bombs in Milwaukee, New York City, around the rest of the country. And one bomb was being delivered to the home of A. Mitchell Palmer with the hope that he would be blown up. And instead, the guy carrying the bomb got blown up on the steps of Palmer's house. Took a little while for the authorities to realize that the remains of a person had been blown up, but they found bits of hair and skin all around the area. And Palmer, because of this attack on his home, became even fiercer in his persecutions and staged with the point man being J. Edgar Hoover, the guy who in later years became the longtime director of the FBI. J. Edgar Hoover was Palmer's assistant, and he oversaw a program of rounding up radicals all over the country. Thousands and thousands of people were arrested during the Palmer raids. They took their name from A. Mitchell Palmer. And, because of the wartime hysteria and just the nature of the Woodrow Wilson government, these raids severely disrupted the lives of people. In Boston, many immigrants, most of them were radicals, and they had a perfect right to be radicals. I'm one myself, and I think probably most of the people in this room would consider themselves in favor of a radical restructuring of society. So these people, the immigrants, were rounded up, kept in horrible conditions. Many of them were beaten severely, and there were almost no legitimate charges against any of them. But many of them were kept on islands in Boston Harbor. And eventually, a couple of hundred of them were deported. And the remainder were released. It was one of the biggest blots on civil liberties, attacks on civil liberties in this country. And I hope that answers the question.
I want to let you know, and folks, if you didn't know, we have on the third floor the entire archive of Cronica Sovversiva, the original archive that they kept, that Bob somehow was able to to amass into his collection. And it's all up there, very, very old. It's been digitized, but the actual
Yeah.
original thing is up there. All of these is like newspapers in Italian, directed to anarchists in New York and Boston mostly.
Yeah, and Luigi
Galliani?
Galliani. Yeah, Luigi Galliani, the editor of the paper, was the leading intellectual figure in the Italian anarchist movement. They were kind of individual anarchists. They didn't look to put a better government in place of the one that they already had. They wanted to get rid of government and authority altogether. Galliani, let's see, I think he lived in Paterson, New Jersey for a while, then moved to Barry, Vermont, where there was a large active community of Italian stonecutters who came from Carrara in Italy. And they worked in the quarries in Vermont, and they were the community that supported Galliani. And he lived there for a number of years, then moved, I think, to East Boston, or maybe Revere, to this area. And the movement had branches in all the communities around the United States where Italian immigrants settled. And it was broken up by the predecessor of the FBI, which was the Bureau of Investigation, before it took the name federal. And Galliani himself was deported to fascist Italy. Yeah, a lot of these people, Italian immigrants, were sent back to fascist Italy, where political conditions were considerably worse than they were in this country. And Galliani spent years on an island. Italian fascism was not as brutal as the German version. People weren't killed that much, but they were exiled to small islands in the Mediterranean where there was nothing to do. There's a very good novel by a guy named Carlo Levi. It's called Christ Stopped at Eboli. And
It's here.
I'm not
I saw it.
surprised at all.
I don't know if I could put my finger on it, but it is
Okay,
there.
it's well worth reading. The protagonist is somewhat politically involved, and he was sent to exile in a town past Eboli in South Italy, where there was absolutely nothing to do. He's a physician, and he's legally not allowed to practice medicine or do anything else. He has to report to the police on a daily basis. And he does end up practicing medicine because he's so much better a practitioner than the other physician in town. But it shows the dreadful nature of life under fascism. And there's another book, Bread and Wine by Ignazio Salone, which also.
We got that one too.
Yep. That's also a very good book. The protagonist in that book comes back to fascist Italy from living in exile in France. France at that time is a free country, but he can't live outside of Italy and outside the struggle. But he gets back to Italy and finds that he's not able to do anything whatsoever. Totalitarianism cuts off all possibility of engaging in any kind of effective struggle. So those two books are highly recommended. And they put their readers on guard against fascism.
Folks, we are almost ready to say goodbye. If there are anybody out there or here who want the link to our Tuesday meeting about the Saccharin Vanzetti Award, and I will offer to you some of the other candidates. Stephen Donziger, who just got out of jail for his battle against the oil companies. What better a candidate could there be? And there's another one who's named Tiokasin Ghosthorse, who's a Native American broadcaster out of upstate New York, I believe. So we have a number of candidates to consider. And I'm hoping that we can have a meeting this Tuesday. What's that, May 3rd, 7 p.m. And the link is very easy. It's this same link, the one that you are tuned to right now. It's Community Church's Sunday Zoom link. And you can join us if you would like a voice in helping to decide who will be our next Sacco Vanzetti Award winner. And then we could have another one after that. And truth be told, we have a list of all the winners on the back, and there's one every year. But, there's nothing in our bylaws that says we have to only give one each year. We can give as many as we want to, but I'm not trying to say that we should give one to every speaker who comes. Let's make it a precious thing that we give to some incredibly worthy person who has suffered for their activism, just like did Saccharin Vanzetti. So we are almost done here. I wanted to finish out with a little song here that is by the group called Windborne.
In the beauty of the day, a million dark and kitchens, 1,000 mellow gray are touched with all the radiance that a sudden sun discloses. For the people hear us sing, bread and roses, bread and roses. As we go marching, marching in the beauty of the day, a million darkened kitchens, 1,000 milmots gray are touched with all the radiance that a sudden sun discloses. For the people hear us singing, bread and roses, bread and roses. As we go marching, marching, we fight for children too. For they are watching, learning, and they'll make the world anew. Our lives shall not be sweated from birth until life closes. Or starve as well as bodies. Give us bread, but give us roses. As we go marching, marching, unnumbered women dead go crying through our singing their ancient cry for bread. Small heart and love and duty, their touching fear is new. Yes, it is bread we fight for, but we fight for roses too. As we go marching, marching, together we stand tall. For the rising of the women means the rising of us all. No more the drudge and idler, and that toil where one reposes, but a sharing of life's glories, bread and roses, bread and roses, bread and roses,
Yeah, just one thing. My dear old friend and well-known wise ass Jim O'Brien once said, "The rising of the women is the rising of us all, or at least half of us." That's what you get with
Maybe
Jim
even
O'Brien.
more than half. Folks, if you can hear me.
We've got a little surprise for you now.
Oh,
As
whoops.
some of you know
I
well,
forgot to turn that
Rex
off.
McGregor has been, and I quote,
Sorry. There we go.
Do you say something about that performance?
That was the group Windborne, Windborne. And they're from Vermont. They're out of the school of Larry Gordon's Village Harmony. One of them is actually the late Larry Gordon's son. Larry is a legendary song leader and choral director, especially of young people. And there's a lot of people who've come out of his school of singing. He passed away about, must have been just 8 months ago. Very tragic passing, and one of that quartet is his son, and we're going to have that group here. They're a marvelous group, Windborne, singing "Bread and Roses" from, of course, the Lawrence strike, the Bread and Roses strike. Let me switch myself to this camera for one last goodbye to everybody. It's been a pleasure having you all. There's a few of you left online and about a half a dozen here in the auditorium. We're going to repair to the table where we're going to break pupusas together. Actually, no, we have rice and chicken and rice and vegetable menu today. Thank you to Luis Guzman, who has prepared our lunch for us, and urge you to join us here on any Sunday morning. But if you need to stay home, that's fine too. In fact, a part of me wish I had stayed home. Folks, let's call it a day. Let's declare the meeting to be over. Meeting at the building is over. We hope we've been an inspiration to you and hope you have a wonderful week and that you make good progress towards a better life for yourself and for your community and for your planet. Meeting at the building soon be over. Amen. Hallelujah. And we